When I first decided to make videos, I wanted to discuss the character I thought at the time was the most broken. And naturally, I chose the Airbender due to his high damage, ability to protect himself, massive amounts of utility, and so on and so forth. However, after more playing, making badass my default go-to mode, and meditating in the mountains in search for the meaning of life, I finally found it. Not the meaning of life, but the meaning of what broken really means. And I'm here to admit that I no longer believe the Airbender is the most broken character in the game. Not because I found him any less powerful, mind you, God knows he's incredibly overpowered if you play him right, but the skill and setup required to play him showed me that he doesn't fit the definition of broken. For something to be broken, I believe it has to be so incredibly easy to use while still providing insane value. Hence why the most broken character can also be not the strongest. It's not broken because it's the best, but it's broken because the risk-reward balance is just not there. And seeing how much skill and risk the Airbender takes, he doesn't fit the bill in my opinion anymore. I will revisit him in a future video to give my updated thoughts, but for now there was still disturbance in the force. I needed to look for the actual most broken character in the game, a character that checks all the boxes when it comes to damage, sustain, mitigation, CC, and so on. A character with low skill floor and a skill ceiling, with no focus on mechanics. A character that can easily clear waves, deal with bosses, survive bullet hell, provide bullet hell, and most importantly, trick your brain into thinking you're actually having fun. Luckily, I didn't have to look for very long.
Free. What?
The Custom Prince, also known as the Prince, also known as... I already made a video on him when he first came out, but that was mostly just an update review. Recently, the Custom Prince got his final skill, so I thought I'd review him again considering he was the second character I ever made a video on. The Custom Prince is by far one of the most popular characters in the game. He's a giant tanky wave clearer with tons of damage, tons of sustain, and all sorts of utility that make him suitable for any playstyle really. He's also a gem character even though two of his skills do cost money, but he's a recipe for a successful character. What differentiates him from characters like the Assassin with a similar appeal is the undeniable imbalance of risk versus reward. Why so? To answer that, let's discuss Soulknight's most broken character and discuss why he's the lowest risk, highest reward you can have. The Custom Prince is the Bruiser character with 4 health, 5 armor, and 270 energy. Bruiser characters is a term I borrowed from League of Legends. It's basically the combination of a tank and damage characters. Tanks are characterized by having a ton of sustain and survivability at the cost of low damage, the opposite being true for damage characters. Bruisers, on the other hand, tend to have both the sustain and the damage at the cost of their playstyle always focusing hyper-aggression and constantly being in fights. Basically, if the tanks are the massive armored vehicle and the damage characters are the weapons on top, the Bruiser characters are the damn tank heads. What makes him a bruiser are his skills, but let's discuss his normal state first. Now, the Custom Prince is generally speaking squishy. He has less total health than the Priestess, however you will find living on him easier thanks to the fact that for some reason only God knows at this point, the Custom Prince runs faster than all the other characters, at 7 movement speed compared to everyone at 6.5. This makes dodging on him pretty easy honestly, although it does mess with your muscle memory a little bit. However, since you don't spend a lot of time in this form, it does come up a little less than you think. The movement speed does however come in incredibly clutch when you do get kicked out of your custom and have to dodge around until it's back up. Generally one of the best features of his character. His passive is the Elemental Pulse buff. Above that increases the size, damage, and duration of all elemental pools produced by you by just stepping on them. This passive is basically just a straight up damage buff since all your skills produce elemental pools. It's not essential to a skill like the IDT or the Demon Mancer passives, but it is pretty helpful and has a pretty much no downside. His starter weapon has 2 firing modes. The first one is a no energy SMG that deals pretty solid damage for the early game. The secondary mode fires a missile that deals latent damage and has a chance to drop an elemental pool. With your passive, this is a nice room opener, so you already have free damage ticking as you go around. However, because of how energy hungry your skills are, I wouldn't recommend overusing this. Just use it as a room opener for as long as you have the weapon. I like keeping it around just because of how it looks with the skin thanks to the gift Z, but otherwise it's pretty mid at best and basically doesn't scale at all without attachments, which on the Prince you really don't want to invest your coins on. That being said, yeah, nobody's here to play in the base Prince. What makes him incredibly powerful to the point of being broken are his different costumes and skills, so let's take a look at them now. The Prince's first costume is the Slime King, and when I tell you this ability was the shit back when it came out, you wouldn't believe me looking at its stats now. But believe me when I say, this ability had to be nerfed for a good reason, because this thing hit this game like a truck. When used, the Prince puts on a Grand Slime costume, essentially a mount that has 20 health, some iframes after getting hit, and reduced movement speed. He gains access to the magic gloves, which fire poison and fire projectiles that leave elemental pools. During this skill, you have a secondary fire that lets you leap into the air.
We have a liftoff.
And create a shockwave that deals damage, leaves poison pools, and releases slow projectiles. Unlike the Berserker, this doesn't give you iframes, but it does cost Dino energy and lets you attack during it. This ability has a 1-second cooldown. Every 2 damage the Prince receives in this costume creates a fire explosion and spawns a slime. Slimes will walk around dealing damage, and once they die or you get out of your costume, they explode and release more projectiles. The cooldown of this skill is relative to how much health you have when you get out of it, starting at 2 seconds if you leave it at full health and going as far as 10 when you're completely out. So basically, to summarize, you're tanky as hell while taking damage, you deal a ton of area damage, you deal a ton of elemental damage, you deal damage to those who attack you, you spawn units that draw aggro away and deal damage, you have an instant damage tool around you, and you can even control how long the cooldown this thing lasts based on how much damage you took. Basically,
That's a lot of damage.
you only lose out on 2 things. A, your speed. The custom prince feels so freaking slow. I mean, look at how miserable I sounded playing him almost 2 years ago.
Flashback.
The speed also hurts, like really badly. I'm an assassin main, man, I can't do this.
Only at 10% speed right now.
And finally, match the main rope plans for some movement speed. I genuinely cannot do this. That being said, I have 2 updated things to say about the whole speed thing. First is, what the hell do you mean this video was almost 2 years ago? I started this channel like last month, didn't I? The second is, I actually had some misjudgment about this. Math thing. When you get into your costume as a prince, you're 20% slower. Since your movement speed is 7, that means that you go down to 5.6. However, the magic gloves give you a 10% speed boost on the prince, which is 0.56 of 5.6, meaning that while fighting, you're actually at 6.16 movement speed, which is slower than everyone, but it is slightly faster than the trap master, meaning it's not really that bad. And yes, you'll be using the magic gloves all the time, because how the hell are you supposed to run out of energy with this much reserve? And with the living room plant, it gets even more tolerable. Since you have it on a 2-second cooldown, you can also just pop in and out of it to utilize the prince's movement speed to move about and the slime's damage when you get close to enemies, a strategy I'll be talking about later. And B, your size, which, yeah, I can't defend at all. This one in any of his costumes is large, like deviant art levels of large. And you might think I'm joking, but I'm dead serious, this might be the worst feature about him. Refer to the strategy on top to get around this. Beyond that, this skill has almost no downsides. The amount of damage you can deal with it is insane. Everything you do does fire or poison damage and releases explosions and projectiles. Since your passive also buffs up pools, that means just walking around almost doubles your damage for free. Get any of these buffs and now literally anything you do will melt through enemies with ease. Dealing with a group of enemies? That's chill. Fire away and suddenly like Thanos, half the room is dead. Dealing with a specific enemy? That's also fine. Get close since the gloves act like a shotgun, and whatever they fire back at you, either tank it with your big ass HP pool, or leap and destroy the projectiles while firing like 30 more back at them. Dealing with bosses? Bro, just shoot them, stomp at them, or get hit a bunch, let the slimes get close, and close the skill to instantly explode. And with how your pets take aggro, your exaggerated 20 HP pool, and iframes, the prince ends up being incredibly tanky on top of dealing all that damage. You don't really need to sacrifice anything for that either. It's not like the paladin where you're stupid tanky but you have no good offense. You're just built like that. Now yes, it does have some weaknesses which I'll discuss in a bit, but the problem is that's so many upsides for basically no risk or skill required. Just use your custom, spam, jump, and attack, and suddenly the room turned into a kid-friendly Russian experiment creepypasta. Even if you run out of energy due to the glove's high energy cost, neither the jump nor the explosion when taking damage cost energy. So you can just stand there and let your Thorns 3 custom finish monsters off if you don't have the energy, or stomp on them like a squash from Plants vs. Zombies. And you know what's the funniest part? It's not the fact that this is his first skill, it's not the fact that you don't need to upgrade it to access all this, it's the fact that back then, it used to be arguably stronger. The leap back then had no cooldown and you could just spam it to your heart's content. And the mount had 40 health, double what it has now, although it didn't have iframes to continuous fire, which, yeah, we might as well get into this skill's basically only weakness. The big soldier is a big son of a bitch. The continuous damage and knockback from these fuck-ass things just makes it impossible to retreat in time, and they shred your costume even with the iframes. Whenever I see a champion variant of these, I just deadass restart the room, or try to get them out of my costume, which thanks to my movement speed I can, but damn it leaves zero room for error. And if you didn't pick any other weapon, well, it's over. Outside of those nightmare things though, there really isn't a lot of things that can take you out if you're paying attention. I guess elongated fights can wear off your costume eventually, but you can constantly hop in and out to manage its HP and cooldown to ensure that never happens. So yeah, overall, a ton of damage, good tankiness, and with basically Homer monkey brain levels of skill to play it. But hey, at least one guy makes it not foolproof. This is the custom prince's definitive defensive skill, which of course means it's generally agreed upon to be his best. Luckily this was changed a bit recently, we'll get to that later though. The prince's second costume is the giant crystal crab. It's a 35 HP mount that's more defensive focused. Like the Slime King, it has some iframes after being hit. The costume is immune to freeze. You gain access to the King's Claw, a 3-hit melee weapon that attacks from both sides of the prince, although recently it was made to be able to turn, God forbid. And at the third attack, it creates a bunch of ice spikes to deal more damage in an area. Much like the Slanking, it also releases Explosion after being damaged, creating spikes that has a chance to freeze enemies. But unfortunately, it doesn't spawn any minions, so sadly no Crystal Grab Ring. Okay, before I explain his secondary fire, let me just read this part of the wiki. While in the costume, taps the extra button to can perform absolute defense. Pressing the secondary fire button makes you enter a defensive stance for up to 4 seconds, becoming immune to all damage. In fact, any damage you take will heal up your costume. After the stance is over, you create a massive freeze pool and spikes. While in this stance, the counter-attack explosion still works, this ability has a 6-second cooldown, and the costume overall has a cooldown of 3 to 10 seconds based on its health, just like the slime. To say this ability is actually insane is an understatement. It has a disgusting amount of health, can constantly freeze enemies with its infliction and attacks, and if you run out of health, that's chill. You can just press the ability and guess what, you get all your HP back and an extra praise on the house. So not only do you have your costume to take out the hits for you with its ridiculous HP, but you can also constantly recharge it and stun enemies to keep it up for that much longer. Fun fact, this thing lasts just as long as the Paladin Shield, but unlike the Paladin Shield, this ability only has a 6-second cooldown, while the shield has 10. So this is one of the strongest defensive tools of the game. Bullet hell? Ignored. Costume on low HP? No to hell it isn't. Massive burst of damage? Don't even know her. You become such a powerhouse of a tank that you can take multiple big soldiers at once, ignoring all their attacks with ease, by juggling both your normal HP and the defensive stance. What's its downside then? Well... yeah, this thing is slow as hell. Much like the Slanking, it slows you down by 20%, and while yes, using the claws does speed you up by 10%, like how it does with the magic gloves, for some reason, Chillroom decided to make this thing walk slower when moving vertically. They deadass decided, you know what, let's make this thing more unbearable to use just by giving it a random arbitrary movement speed nerf when moving vertically. It'll be hilarious, trust me. And let me tell you, it isn't. Like seriously, why is this a thing? It doesn't stack with a 20% speed nerf, which, thank god, but making the already slow-ass costume even slower is so boring. Can you imagine a character being punished just because the dungeon room decided to spawn north or south? She doesn't count. Another downside to this thing is just how little damage it deals, at least compared to the Slanking, since the defensive stance has a massive cooldown. But the reward is way higher since in this game, generally speaking, defensive playstyles reign supreme thanks to this. For me, however, this skill is just so boring. You're slow, you're barely ticketing enemies, and your most powerful stance just has you stand still and pray the monsters don't show off their latest Stormtrooper cosplay. While I do believe this skill is pretty strong and even somewhat broken if you play your cards right, it just lacks the fun factor for me. I mean, hell, while collecting this footage, I just often decided to pull shit like this, entering the room without my costume, just to feel something.
About time y'all show some respect around here. Huh?
Kyler, wait for the master.
Whoa! Damn! I'm sorry, man. I thought this was the bathroom. Sorry. Lee, I got a big problem, man. This boy's on steroids. He got a head like Barry Bonds. Oh, no. Come on, man.
Now look, Soulknight is no stranger to long descriptions that offer complicated mechanics that are low-key and necessary. But this skill and its description is a whole new beast. The first time I saw this thing, I literally rolled my eyes at just seeing how big the text box was. But then I looked at the wiki and I straight up froze, like what the fuck?
قرف ده ايه القرف ده
خلينا في القضية
ايه
الأساسية.
القرف ده
In fact, let me check something. Pull your pencils and notebooks out because we're in for a bad time. Okay, starting us off, this skill has 4 components: the Summoning Leap, the Valor Health part, the Basic Attacks, and the Violet Impact. Let's tackle each one. When first summoned, the King Violet's costume drops from the sky, dealing damage. He has iframes during this and can go over walls. The costume itself has iframes after taking damage like all the previous ones. Valor points replace the costume's health bar. You start off at 30 and can accumulate up to 100. However, since you do receive 5 times the damage while in this mount, that means you start off with 6 health points and can get up to 20 effectively. You gain Valor points by damaging and killing enemies. This means that this fucker just has lifesteal. Deadass lifesteal. Not some, oh, I have a small chance of getting health back when I kill enemies, ho ho, I'm so good. No, you just smack a bitch and reap them of their own life. So now instead of backing off and healing or disabling the skill and letting it get to cooldown then reusing it, all you need to do to get back into the fight is just unalive another fool. Be careful though, because you do lose Valor over time if you're not damaging anyone, and lose it faster at a higher rate when at high Valor. Just bleed out apparently, I don't know. Valor points decide the state and attacks that your custom does. At low valor, aka below half, you're 20% slower. It says on the description that you have damage reduction during this, but it seems to be bugged or written incorrectly. At high valor, you gain a ton of new bonuses. You're now immune to freeze and stuns. You have increased damage, attack speed, and crit rate. Your movement speed is increased by 20%, which means you're now back at your normal non-costume movement speed, which... yeah, seeing this made me understand why the other two costumes needed speed nerfs. This is goddamn ridiculous. And your secondary fire/ability cooldown gets reduced by 20%. Before we discuss that, let's look at his basic attacks. The Violet King uses his sword to deal damage, which grants him movement speed when they damage enemies. This doesn't stack with the increased speed when on the high valor, which the monsters are thankful for. The custom has 5 attacks in total, and they change based on his valor. At low valor, he has access to a double sword swing, a sword thrust, and a sword spin, doing these in the order while the button is held down. At high valor, however, you access the swing and the thrust. When the third attack, the prince just decides to fuck off with all the medieval nonsense, throwing his swords and opting to start platinum the meat off of enemies. According to the description, the punch is supposed to inflict a stun, but again, bug emoji. The swords are loyal homies though, and they start spinning, inflicting freeze and burn before returning to you. Although one of them seems to have some ADHD, I don't know what this is about. A small problem with this attack is while the sword spin deals a nice damage and can freeze, the punch hitbox is pretty short. You can avoid that though by constantly tapping the attack button instead of holding it down to avoid throwing your swords. But if you are close in range, which you should be, it won't be a big deal. Using the secondary fire/ability button causes the prince to leap into the air, using violently. He lands dealing damage and pulling enemies towards him. This also empowers his basic attacks. The empowered basic attacks release projectiles in each swing. The landing wave removes bullets like a melee weapon, stuns enemies for 2 seconds, and creates fire. This attack has a 5-second cooldown and is performed much faster at high valor. Remember that while at high valor, this ability cools down faster too. Unlike the Berserker, this ability doesn't grant you an iframes. So to recap, Chillroom has lost their goddamn minds. I made a joke about how much bullshit words and mechanics the Astromancer got, but at least that was his entire kit. All of this was just one skill of the custom ranks. What the hell is going on? The skill has some insane movement speed since it's the only one that doesn't slow you down. It has ridiculous damage output on both single target and on groups, but unlike other mounts thanks to its lifesteal, this thing can potentially last the entire floor, with way less skill required than the crap custom. It has the defense, the damage, and the speed. It's also nasty for dealing with groups. Like seriously, look at it in World 4. I be out here putting monsters in the Hitman Grape Juicer. Here's a guide on how to use the skill effectively. First, you put your thumb here, then put another one there. Then you hover the final finger here. Yeah, it's quite the brain-dead skill. Ironically enough, it's not because of all this pointless yapping that's just 7 different colors of damage. It's the effective lifesteal that this thing has. There is a reason why even the vampire, whose whole thing is self-healing, doesn't have direct continuous lifesteal. It's because it leads to this sort of boring gameplay that just rushing in like a madman fighting constantly to stay up. It's also kind of broken, honestly. But I'll be honest, despite that, it's still super fun, honestly. Even though it does get old a bit, I play sparingly enough that it never really burns out on me. It encourages extreme aggression and constantly jumping from room to room to continue fighting. It's also strong enough to reward that playstyle. My favorite thing about it is how it encourages you to just quickly go from room to room to keep up the momentum, making it a great tempo skill. Since you can't pick up weapons anyways in the customs, you're not really punished for skipping chests rooms, so it's great for that quick, fast playstyle. Unfortunately, it also means that in co-op, doing this will drag your team with you, like my boy Zed, who was unfortunate enough to have to bear that with me and get dragged from room to room like a helpless minion.
Let me tell you something. Let me tell you something. Let me tell you something. Oh, I don't want to go.
Trust me, I'm trying to think of a downside to this skill, but I really can't find any. It has it all, and it's super easy to use. Well, actually, it does have one problem. Since you need the damage to damage enemies to get your life back, enemies with long iframes can give you a ton of trouble. Look, short and sweet, fuck the volcanic sand wall. There's also the fact that this skill's cooldown is massive and can't be reduced in any way. So if you mismanage it and you end up getting kicked out of it early, well... This also means that an old friend of ours called spamming the skill by accident, which kicks you out of your custom instantly, comes back to bite us in the cheeks. So yeah, overall this skill is by far his best in damage, defense, and fun factor, and also CC. It gets dull after a bit, but that's thanks to its repetitive playstyle and the lower skill requirement. That being said, punching the meat of the Dragon Bros while taking close to no damage still does hit different, not gonna lie. So there we have it. By pressing the skill, you either get a massive amount of damage, impenetrable defense, or constant pressure, or realistically speaking, all three, with various degrees of course. The problem with this character is that despite all the different mechanics, none of it really demands anything from you as a player. There's nothing to juggle or maintain or make account for. It's all upsides and no downside. Now, it's not like the character plays itself, and you do have to account for the cooldowns, but doing these basic tasks rewards you with everything, making the character have no downsides. Even if you watch for your cooldowns as the paladin, you're still limited in damage. Even if you up your dodging game as the rogue, you still have low defense for the unescapable bullet hells. Even if you maximize your damage as a berserker, you're still very fragile and lack defense. All you need to do on the custom base is just make sure your abilities are ready, whether that be the customs or the abilities. And when you do, you have everything you need. You can literally go with the worst buff options, weapons, statues, and what have you, and you'll still be able to clear the game no problem. Once again, the custom prince is not the strongest character in the game. There are situations where messing up will mean instant death, and his consistency isn't up there. But he is broken just due to the fact that the risk is very low, meanwhile he has all the reward. Now, will that be changed in the future? Simply put, I didn't think so. You see, the other character I claimed broken got nerfed, the Airbender. And then the first skill of the custom prince also got nerfed. But broken stuff like the Paladin Shield or the other customs for the prince were not touched. It's clear that Children are okay with paid characters being essentially the GTA cheat codes of the game. And personally, I think that's fine as long as the game stays single play and co-op. There's really no unfair advantage anyone is having over anyone. We're not fighting each other. What matters is the fun factor while fighting the enemies. Unfortunately, he's also flawed in the fun factor. The first skill is kind of brain dead because he just kind of WM1 through everything. The second skill is extremely slow and plays like a more boring Paladin Shield, so even that's not really fun, even though the reward is technically higher. And while the first skill is decently fun, it's by far the most limited of them, so even with the fun factor, it's not really up there in my opinion. So overall, while I do believe this character is flawed and it's a bit fun, I don't see or honestly think it should be changed. It will most likely stay there as the buff me up San Andreas cheat code on the side for those willing to pay up for a few extra wins. And well, not every character can be as well designed as the assassin, so I guess that's also fine. Thanks for watching. I hope you liked this review of the Prince. This is the first time I review a character after making a video on the release, so I hope it was like to your liking. I am definitely open to doing the other characters too. Like I said, I am planning to revisit the Airbender, and I can do an Evolution War video of the Stone Master and Lancer, seeing how both evolved after they get all their skills. So let me know if this interests you. Like and subscribe for more content, and let me know what you'd like to see next. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.